very much for this privilege to be able to come and stand before you and speak in my own constituency of architects. It is my great privilege to stand before you and share my thoughts with you on visionary leadership and rebuilding our society. Thank you very much for the privilege. Architecture is the art and the science of designing and creation of open and closed spaces to shelter people and provide the realities of abode and activities, rest, work, leisure and play, creating and providing aesthetic and functional spaces for human expressions. Structural components deal basically with internal integrity as the basis of foundation, strength, sustainability, soundness, and success. They are a basic reference to life and focus on what truly works, whatever the cosmetic or the aesthetic trimmings. Structure seeks to emphasize the importance of strength, integrity, resistance, and adaptability of structures of form and function against external and internal impacts of use, compressive, tensile, and shear forces or challenges. Architecture is therefore the art and the science that helps us to understand the basic and also advanced foundations of structures and systems and the applications of principles that govern the synergy of form and function with sustainability. The key to progress of people and society is positive growth from one level to what is better and higher. I'm here today to challenge this select group in our society to leadership along the path of principles that they constantly operate by, intellectually and professionally, in the light of external and internal dynamics of our society. Today, the realities in Nigeria show undeniable systemic dysfunction in the story of its leadership on one hand and the fabric of society at large on the other hand, in a symbiosis of self-created failings and wastage that calls for a solemn internal audit of the apparent degradation of its collective interface and polity, affecting its security, its economy, its sociology, our morality, politics, and the quality of life. Our internal integrity has to do with our values, our virtues, our knowledge, our mindset, our perception, and also our built capacity. Leadership and positive dynamic growth and change requires much more than honesty and basic administrative ability. Effective leadership, like I know we need in Nigeria today, demands, in addition to integrity, competence, vision, and innovation. Our functions and dysfunctions are directly tied to the values we have embraced and the virtues that we have also developed. Our inward composition determines our outward expressions and therefore our achievements, failures, and consequently manifestations of our society. And I just want to, this today just happened two things, our values and our virtues. It's not the absence really of people who have been to school, not an absence of intelligent people. It's more a situation of the loss of our values. And that's why we have such educated people who have been to school, such highly placed professionals, and then we're failing in nation building. Why? And I just want to bring our attention to this. Values speak of embraced and adopted standards of belief, perception, thought, attitude, conduct, and action that will enable us to operate in truth rather than in deception, rightness rather than corruption, justice rather than injustice, equity rather than greed, stewardship rather than irresponsibility, respect rather than disregard, honor rather than shame or disgrace, and dignity rather than humiliation. What really is justice? Justice is actually the right administration of judgment. It's the rule of law and the enforcement of order. We are not failing because we don't have a constitution or good sets of rules. It's just simply the absence of justice in our system and being able to have the rule of law and the enforcement of order. Equity is the fair distribution of wealth, resources, or gain, and stewardship is performance and faithful execution of responsibility entrusted with. Virtue addresses, on the other hand, the inner essence and quality for spiritual, moral, intellectual development that power our expressions, our relationships, and our attainments in life. What is leadership? And I'm speaking to people I believe as professionals are also leaders in society. Leadership is simply the power or ability to guide, to direct, or lead people. It is taking responsibility for and about life, location, and people. It's not about blames or the blame game that we are so used to today, or even living in denial. We have situations and challenges, but maybe when we look the other way and don't even address it, then we begin to feel maybe the problems will go away. They won't go away. Leadership has to do with taking responsibility about life, location, and people. But leadership must start with oneself. Leadership is the difference that ushers in new realities and results to the status quo. It is the arrowhead of making a difference in moving location, in taking position, in making resolution, and also in evolving solutions. Probably one of the boldest and most blatant architects since Franklin Lloyd Wright, the late Zaha Hadid, redefined architecture to include not only form and function, totally out of the box, but express the most daring, if otherworldly architecture of passion, of emotion, and of wonder. She has been described as the queen of the curves, forcing a rethink in even structural resolutions of buildings, far beyond regular box or cubist technology. She extended herself well beyond buildings to even fashion, to furniture, to sculpture, to futuristic movies, and even more. She went beyond the predictable into a sophisticated world of limitless realities of expanded consciousness and exhilarating beauty and possibilities. But back to our present reality. Never has our nation, Nigeria, needed more the true innovative architectural spirit and dynamism that creates beauty and structure with possibilities beyond anything visible in our present tragic realities. Because nothing is impossible. And like we also say, impossible is nothing. I challenge the distinguished gathering of professionals in this August meeting to refuse to despair or merely complain of the status quo, but rather to activate the innovator within each and every one of us. Innovators and visionaries are people who ask the question of why and answer with why not. They go beyond solving problems and challenges to creating new possibilities and fresh realities. They come out of the box of tradition and limitation and think in 3 or more dimensions. They go beyond the horizon into the vast expanse of life's space where nothing is impossible. They touch the world beyond and bring it beside us. They touch eternity and drag its elements into time so that we could experience our next levels and much more. They create an environment and interface where the previously impossible lives in present possibility. Their only creed is going from glory to glory. Innovation is first a spirit, then it is an attitude, a way of seeing life. It is a perpetual hunger and thirst that feeds continuous action to create newness, upliftment, betterment, greatness, beauty, and joy, which I believe is the vein of the architect. I believe it's the life of the architect to create newness in the spaces that we create, whether they are closed spaces or they are open spaces. The spirit of innovation cannot be stopped by fear of people of failure. It chooses and maintains focus, making its mark with all its strength and whatever resources at its disposal, spiritual, intellectual, and material. Every action-driven achievement is but a station in the never-ending journey of excellence that has expelled all skies and lives rather in the space of dimensions in conformity with eternity. Critical thinking is in the ability to think clearly and rationally about what to do or what to believe. It includes the ability to engage in reflective and independent thinking. Providing an enabling environment for our people and land is not rocket science. Smaller and younger nations have done so. Where there is a will, there always could be found a way, if only we care. Why would a nation like this, with all the things that we have endowed in Nigeria, how come we have 70% of our people living under the poverty line of less than $2? How come we have in our nation two of the most terrible situations of tragic terrorism in our land? What went wrong with us? How come that people of such diversity and giftings live at loggerheads and live beneath their privilege? It's time for us to audit what has happened to us and proffer not just an expansion of the problems, but what will make us to change. You know, critical thinking enables us to recognize facts and needs through observational skills. What we're able to observe, the inferences we will draw from the inventories we learn right from Architecture 101. For any project, you go and make an inventory. It's trying to look into your abilities and train and groom you and your observational skills. And we need that in the real world today. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this station? How come 70% of our people live below the poverty line? And if you look at a population of almost 200 million people, you're talking about 140 million people. That is not acceptable. We need to approach and to create value through innovative skills. And I'm using the word innovation because that's what architecture is about. The creativity that we are trained to offer and to give to our nations. And then to be able to generate wealth through management skills. Critical thinking demands relevant questions of what is happening and why. What are the options? What are the alternatives? What are the possibilities for our nation? How can the status quo or the present trend be improved? I believe people there is nothing, however beautiful, however great, and however wonderful, that cannot be improved. And I think we can improve our nation. What advantage, what resource or partnership is available on hand to connect with, act with, and to move forward? If you were listening to what Paul Alaje was saying before, he was saying something about why architects seem to have come to against a brick wall. Ideas, we have it. I remember a few years ago at Chelsea Hotel during one of the meetings, and people were wondering, what next for architects? Architects are doing everything else except architecture. And the question was, we don't have the money. But the question also was, who puts the ideas together that generate the money? The architects do. How have we not found partnership in access to finances and resources that will bring to pass the big dreams that we are capable of creating? All the spaces today in our world, open and closed spaces, are created by architects. How have we been unable to connect to resources and bring the creativity to the fore that we were trained to do? How are we leaving our profession to do something else when other people can do what we are doing? And that's the question. How do we network? How do we connect with resources? And that's a very, very relevant thing. And you know, when you have creativity and find no expression, it becomes frustration. And I think that, you know, as one of the speakers today, it's something wise to listen to. There is a way around it, within our nation and outside our nation. And thank God for the fact that today the world has been reduced to a global village. You can always access, you will always access resources if you connect to the right people. We can only change what we truly care about. In conclusion, may I challenge us seated here today to rise and to dare to redesign and recreate our presently dysfunctional nation and society by adopting a mindset and raising structures of positive growth and progress. I found that one of the biggest problems we have is that we have a situation where our minds have stopped thinking. We have put limitations upon ourselves as to what we can do and what we cannot do. And so you have people who are so highly trained but can find no expression amongst ourselves or in our nations. I believe that we have the resources for every state capital to beat Dubai. The people are here. We just somehow have not made the connection with resources, within or without. Most of the things and the buildings that we see in Dubai are not built by Dubai architects. They were in partnership with architects across the global village. They came together. Architects, technologists who could bring stuff together. Specialists in power production, whether you're talking about renewable energy or even the conventional energy. Whether you're talking about different forms of ideas of entertainment. They came together because as a global village, ideas are inexhaustible. This country houses 7 of the vegetations of Africa, which means that we have options most nations of the world don't have. Everything from the salt and mangrove forest right to the desert and the semi-arid in the north. We have the best provision in life for vegetation, for natural resources. How can Africa have 40% of the world's natural resources and contribute only 1% to its gross domestic product? Something is wrong. And what is wrong? And that's our mindset. I want to address that before I sit. That in order to move forward, we have to move forward with a mindset and raising of structures for positive growth and progress. We need to have the consciousness, the development, the commitment to purpose of continuous improvement and growth. The sad reality about many of us is that once we just reach the first edges of success, we stop trying to get better. We need to embrace the reality of faith, of hope, and of love. Faith, which is actually not a belief, but actually action taken based on what you believe. Hope, which has to do with the picture of a future. Unless we can envisage a better Nigeria, all we will do is to complain and expand the problems. Love is actually not a feeling. It's much more than that. It's caring for our people and our land. And believe me, what we care for, we will truly change and improve. We need to embrace the values of truth, of righteousness, of rightness, of justice, of equity, of enabling respect, of honor, of dignity for our people and our society. We need to also embrace the culture of knowledge, of skill acquisition, of personal and societal development and transformation. We need to embrace the culture of hard work, of teamwork, of production of goods and services, of stewardship of resources. We need to embrace the culture of profitability, of performance, of progress with best, not worst practices, of integrity, of excellence. We need to adopt the culture of relevance beyond the present. That's why we can have the Mike Zuckerbergs and all the technological people who can think about the future. They are even affecting how you are going to think by providing devices that have gone ahead of you. We need to embrace also that we should have an awareness and due consideration and development of actions in the context of both personal, our local and national and global interface in our relationships and our dynamics. With such a mindset comes the potential and positioning to effectively change, degrade and replace negative and unacceptable values, practices or traditions predicated or built on selfishness, deception, corruption, injustice and greed, decadence, retrogression, oppression, waste, death and destruction of lives and property. It is time now to arise together with a different and positive spirit to deliberately design, to set and build structures and institutions for an alternative enabling environment of justice and the rule of law, peace, unity, mutual respect, productivity, prosperity, sustainable growth, and advancement. Together, let us build a society, a people, and a land of beauty and excellence, with honor and dignity that is better, that is stronger, and that is greater. I thank you.
Okay, sir, can you just introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Reverend Architect Polycarp Gbaja.
Okay. Good to have you at Archibuilt Exposition. What can you say about the exposition?
I think that it's a good one. First of all, the thought behind Archibuilt is a very noble one. It's a platform upon which there is a continuous improvement, not just in the academics, but in the components of architecture and its buildings. And because the world is constantly evolving, technology is evolving, and Archibuilt has been put in place as that platform, as that structure that continues to feed the technological development, the material development of architecture as a profession. So it's also the blending also of the designers and also the manufacturers within the industry of built and also open spaces.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Talking about your presentation today.
Yes.
Can you give us a summary of your presentation? What is it all about?
My presentation is about it's about leadership and also the forging of a new Nigeria based on a revisiting of our values. The reason why our country is suffering today and we're experiencing so much failure is not because we don't have educated people. It's just that, you know, the basic values that make the structure of nation building and society's viability is broken down. The walls of our society have broken down, and therefore we need to return to the structure, the skeleton that holds the body of this country is our values, the things that we hold dear, the things that inform our actions, our thoughts, our spiritual development, and our material development. These things have to be revisited, and I believe that at the heart of our failure is our failure in terms of our values. So I spoke today about leadership, about the fact that, you know, we have to revisit those values and embrace the values that make it possible to have sustainable development and a society that is really growing and workable.
Okay. Thank you. Finally, sir,
Yes.
what do you have to say about the growth of Archibuilt Exposition over the years?
I think that over the years, it has been growing. What you see is daily we have development technologically. And the face of architecture, the nature of architecture is changing with development, with new materials, with energy development, with material development, with accessibility to knowledge and technologies. Things are changing. And I can see that Archibuilt in the materials and the components of building, in the expressions of buildings are changing beautifully. And my sincere desire is that, you know, the body of our nation, the structure, the environment will enable our architects to also find expression, because Nigeria has a long way to go. We have not had very many of new expressions of architecture because of the economic component and political component of our nation that has been facing a lot of challenges. And I hope that, you know, that our nation will develop to the point where we have an enabling environment that allows not only architects but also other professions to develop beautifully and fully in the building of this wonderful society and political Nigeria. So I envisage a leadership at the point where the profession of architecture will find the beautiful, beautiful contribution and expressions that it needs.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Any final words for the organizers?
Well, I want to tell them that, first of all, I want to give kudos to the NIA and to the Archibuilt committee that set this up. They have done a beautiful job. They have kept the faith. As long as we continue to have a forum of interface and interaction, development and growth will continue. And I want to really give great kudos. I salute the courage of Archibuilt. I salute their consistency. Every August, they come again, look deep inside and get the energy to call people again. And as long as human beings meet and interface and change ideas, there will be development, there will be progress. And so I want to say a big well done to the committee of Archibuilt and the leaders and the executives that have seen to this successful outing again of Archibuilt 2018.
Thank you very much.